I like the fact that we've brought so many different disciplines together to give the information to people that will truly prove that you can impact your health and wellness, like Francis Murphy, right?
That's right. Dr. Francis Murphy is a doctor of chiropractic, and he is an expert in walking, which we all know is the foundation to good health.
Take a look at this.
Dr. Murphy, it is an incredible pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time to meet.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your background, your inspiration, where you are in really your path of health, and how you've helped so many individuals, so many patients over the years.
Okay, well, I'm a chiropractor, and I've been a chiropractor since 1995. And during the course of my chiropractic career, I've seen a lot of patients. I was the chiropractor for Southern Methodist University, and I'm right in the heart of Dallas, and a lot of celebs and interesting people come to my practice. And in 2006, I had a patient come into my office who had frozen shoulder syndrome. And frozen shoulder is an idiopathic disease. Nobody knows what causes it or what the onset is. Basically don't know how to treat it either. And it seemed, people would come into my office and want to be treated for frozen shoulder syndrome. I didn't know what to do for them. So I started to dig into it. And at night I'd go home and I'd, go listen to blogs and reread my anatomy and physiology books and just find out what people were saying about frozen shoulder syndrome. And so I started to read through the paradigm of the medical paradigm for frozen shoulder syndrome, and it didn't add up to me. It seemed as though their explanation of what it was completely different than what I was seeing. And so I began to look into it a little bit more. And this one woman I was working on had come to me one day, and she said, "I can't take this anymore. I'm going to go have the surgery." But the evening before that, I had this light bulb moment where I thought to myself, this is something different going on there. This is something to do with the nervous system and the skull-on-spine relationship that is affecting those nerves come down into the arm, into the shoulder, and allow the shoulder to work properly. And it seemed to me that those particular muscles were turned off. So I kind of worked my way back through it and took a new x-ray of her, and I noticed that her skull-on-spine relationship was off. Her head was lifted and tilted and rotated. And it seemed very odd to me, and I hadn't noticed it before because the x-ray I took of her originally was of her shoulder. So I started to think about what that head lift and rotation could cause. And I came up with the conclusion that the spinal accessory nerve, which runs the shoulder, may be involved, and the only way to access that nerve is on the skull-on-spine relationship. So I devised a way to correct her skull-on-spine relationship, and her arm came up immediately.
Wow.
It was miraculous, and I have a big practice, a lot of people in one big room, a lot of soft tissue people working on these people. Me, I'm kind of like holding court in there, making sure everybody's doing everything just so. And everybody had kind of turned and stopped to watch me perform this adjustment. And when I adjusted her arm instantly came up. It was miraculous. And it was kind of like a tent revival for a little bit. But after digging into it and deciding that, I did this adjustment and it changed her motion, her function, but I wasn't sure what I did. So I started to dig in deeper to it and find that these people that have frozen shoulder also have other cranial nerve disturbances. This head-on spine relationship is really, really important. And so I started to take on other patients that had kids with developmental disorders and people with MS and Tourette's, Bell's palsy, tic disorders. There's a new one out there called POTS. It's a real popular disorder that doctors are trying to work their way around. It's all related to this head-on spine relationship. So in 2010, I had a heart attack. And I had done so much reading and discovery on walking, because after you fix the inherent problem with people that have frozen shoulder syndrome and all these other disorders is the machine, our body, has broken down, and it's designed to work in an ultra specific way, and walking is the way our body is designed to function. We are nomads, hunters and gatherers. Survival takes on a lot of different strategies. Well, the survival strategy associated with walking is you're upright, you're tall, you can see far, and you're looking for things like water, food, prey, and potentially danger, right? So that's the strategy of being upright. Now, the average person back in the days where we hunted and gathered walked about 15 miles a day, and nobody does that nowadays. Hardly anybody walks that much. But we sit a lot, and we drive our body into this flex forward situation. Right. And when you're flexed forward like this, it inhibits your breathing, your ability to breathe. Your diaphragm becomes paralyzed over time, but its ability to lift and drop and pull air into your body is decreased a lot when you're flexed forward and sitting. Also, it brings your ribs together in the front, which have a space between them, and ligaments live in there. And as time goes by, those ligaments get shorter, so our posture becomes very flexed forward and stuck there. So now we're not getting enough oxygen in our body. So people put a lot of interest in nutrition and eating the right things. But if your body is not set up properly and getting enough oxygen and using it the way that it was designed to be used, you're not getting the most out of your food or anything.
Right.
To try to change somebody's diet and make them healthy through diet and not to have addressed the oxygenation of the body is backwards. Good function starts with good erect posture. Walking is what we're made of, what we're supposed to be doing all the time. And when that's all in play and working properly, we are arcing thousands of bits of information into a very ultra-specific part of our brain that allows our body to digest properly, to do everything it does properly. It controls the sympathetic nervous system, and when it does that, it controls the way you distribute nutrients through your body, and even if you're able to do it properly.
Right. What you're saying is so fascinating. I was interviewing Dr. Heather Hausenblas, who was speaking about how sitting is the new disease, right? So there's a sitting disease that we are starting to really experience, and that sitting is the new smoking. And we are, as you've mentioned, really needing to incorporate more movement and getting up and walking around, if it's even putting an alarm on our computer. But we're just not set up in society to do, right now we're sitting. We should be standing.
It's like we're devolving.
Right.
So we've come up to this ultra beautiful position, and now we're taking it back down to all fours again. And it's not the best and most healthy thing for a human being.
And when we are overweight or we have obesity and we're suffering from obesity, can you talk to us a little bit about what that does to the spine and to the skeletal system?
Well, it puts a load, extra weight puts a load on your spine, but more than anything, it impedes your breathing and your ability to exercise. You can't move around normally when you're obese and you have those kinds of problems. So having your brain function at a very high level under those circumstances would be very unusual.
Tell us more about that.
Well, so the body, for the longest time, you probably heard of this Framingham study that put fat as a culprit in our diet as
Right.
being a really bad. And I think it's pretty well known now that it's carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are so addicting, and it's in everything. You can't get away from it. So when you're not stoking your body properly, if your metabolism is not right, when you take in food, you're not going to be able to use it properly. And you start storing it as fat. And over time, it becomes a deadly disease because it reinforces sedentary lifestyle. It reinforces so many bad things. Once you're eating a lot of sugar, you have a craving for sugar now. And this puts fat on your body, difficult to get off, especially as you get older. And so as your spine moves less and less, the nervous system that works through your spine functions at a much lower level. What's the most interesting thing most people don't know is that it's movement that puts the telemetry into your brain. It's the movement of your body. It forms a river of information flowing toward your brain. And that river of information, things can be dumped onto it and sent to your brain, right? But if the river slows down and the information that's constantly bombarding your brain starts slowing down, the information doesn't get to your brain. So keeping your body stoked, keeping your metabolism right is a really, really important part of longevity. And so as the sedentary process digs into your body and starts to change the way you move around, you start to see degenerative processes. Any degenerative process you see in your skeleton is already happening in your central nervous system. You can't have degenerative processes going on in your spine that haven't already been degenerative processes in your central nervous system. And most people don't realize that.
That connection is fascinating. And why walking? So many of us think that we've got to get in the gym, we have to work out hard, and we missed the day, and then we feel guilty. Well, a lot of people do feel that. Can you talk to us a little bit about walking as a movement and this connection here?
Yeah, so it goes back to this postural position that our body is born with. Right? Ultimately, we're born in a C-shaped position, being in the womb, and then we start to lay out flat. And over time, as we crawl, we start to strengthen and form curves in our spine, and then ultimately we can get up and walk like an adult. And so this process brings us to this spot where we're supposed to be. And to work the system, arcs that information into the ultra-specific part of your brain that now sends it down into your body. So it's this loop that's created that is the ultimate health loop. And when we start to distort it by flexing forward and not using that walking that's so much part of how we were developed, we start to decay. And so walking, like I said earlier, and I had this heart attack back in 2010. And I had done so much research and work on people with these disorders of frozen shoulder, MS, Parkinson's, all these different things that were being affected by the brainstem. And I was not in a good place. I needed to recover my health. And I said, I've done all the research. I know what it takes to do this. So I started walking. And I started walking with 5 to 7 miles a day for an entire summer.
And did you start with that? No, I'm sure not, right? Like, what happened? What was the progression after you had had the heart attack?
Well, I was in a coma for 38 days.
Wow.
And then 3 months of learning how to walk and talk and everything again. And but I knew once I got cognitively stronger that the way back was going to be through walking.
How did you know that?
Because I studied everything there was to study about it. I knew that people that have frozen shoulder, MS, all these different disorders, they had a postural distortion that was creating it. And the way to bring them back is to put them into that cross-crawl motion, that motility motion. Again, that's what super strengthens the core muscles of the spine, is the motility, the moving back and forth, the sway. And that sway protects your spine. Every time you move a little bit, the spine readjusts to protect your body in that ultra-specific position. So when you're walking, it's this constant, it's almost like a snake moving around the core of your body. It's changing, it's where it's doing its work to protect your spine and give it strength in that position.
So there's a specific way of walking.
Yes, there is.
Kathy Smith, when we spoke with her, she was showing us the same sort of movement. Tell us a little bit more about that,
Yeah,
too.
so the motility motion of motility when you break it down, is the head slightly moves toward the arm that's extended, and there's this ultra specific movement. What a lot of people nowadays, they're not looking for prey in food or anything like that. So when they're strolling, they're not really paying attention. But the ultimate way to walk is to have your gaze set and guide your walking. So the eyes have a lot to do with it. The eyes play a big role in survival in every way. And when you lose your eyesight, your other parts of your body start to take over to accommodate for that. But the eyes are one of the most important things about walking, is to set your gaze and walk toward that. And it has everything to do with lining up your nervous system properly. And then the motion, the motility motion, is a very upright motion. It allows breathing with your diaphragm and your chest. And the man is not really designed to run. Running was more of a get away from prey or hunt something you've injured down to get it. But they didn't really run that much unless it was very necessary. Walking is what they did. And this is the ultra specific. Even running puts you in a slightly flexed forward position and arcs information to a slightly different part of your brain than walking does. And walking is the ultimate activity for a human being. And so when I fix this head-on spine relationship for people, I put them into motility exercises, walking, putting them on a treadmill, a VersaClimber, something that brings a sway into the spine and allows that contraction, relaxation process to go over again and again and go over and thicken the muscles around the spine to protect it and for a long life. It's a good strategy for keeping your brain healthy and your body healthy, walking.
That is incredible. So for you, going back to this period of time, so you were in a coma for 38 days, and then you spent the next 3 months rehabilitating. When did you do the research around walking, and how did you come to know that, okay, I've got to, this is my path to life?
So I did the research before I had the heart attack. I was correcting this disorder that was causing frozen shoulder and all these developmental difficulties in kids. And so once you fix it, you have to strengthen the body, or it just kind of falls back into this pathological position that it's been. You know, the body starts to take to positions that it's been in for a long time. And so just like poor posture, your shoulders start slumping. So people that had this head lift and rotation problem, once you fix it, they're vulnerable to falling back into that again.
Right.
The way to fix them is to regather their posture.
And so that's what you had to do for yourself?
I had to do it for myself. My posture was really waning, and I really needed to arc that information into the right part of my head. I knew what part of my head I needed to arc it into, but I wasn't getting there. So I started to walk, and little by little, sure enough, my memory started coming back. My things that I had lost during the course of that 4-month period.
Such as?
Memory, ability to speak properly.
Wow.
I had a real difficult time speaking. I couldn't write. I couldn't look at a phone and just quickly dial like I used to. I had to really study it before I could initiate any activity. And then as I walked and further and further, and for a longer period of time, every day I was getting stronger and stronger. My brain, I could feel that it was getting, it just got more endurance. My brain was able to work for a longer time without getting fatigued. When I go to bed at night, it usually was a time that I was really have a hard time reading and putting together things, and it was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I have to attribute it to walking.
So when you first got out of the initial 3 months of rehab, how much walking were you doing that
couldn't
first
walk
week?
at all.
You couldn't walk at all.
I couldn't.
So can you just talk to us about the progression? Like
Yeah.
week 1, week 2, how long did it take to get to that 15 miles a day? Is that where you went?
7 miles, 5 to 7 miles a day.
Okay.
It was a little over 600 miles for the summer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us about the progression. Like, how
So-
long did you start walking?
At first, I could only walk down to the end of my street, and then I used to have to sit down and just recover from that and then walk back. And I'd take it maybe 15 or 20 steps further until I got to the point where I'm going to go, I'm going to go 500 steps further today. And then little by little, I just took it to a point where, oh, you know what? This is enough walking for one day. This should get the job done. And so that's where I stopped, around 5 to 7.
Wow.
Yeah. I walked in the rain, 90-degree heat, 100-degree heat. I live in Texas. So I would make these little games with myself of walking from shadow to shadow. But it was interesting, and I was on my mind to not let a day go by without doing that, and the result was what I hoped it would be.
So you're wearing sneakers right now,
I
and
am.
I'm wearing high heels.
Mm-hmm. Why
Tell
am
me
I
a
wearing
little-
sneakers?
Yes.
Because I came in from New Jersey today, and I took the train, and I hate wearing shoes, so
Yeah.
I knew my feet would hurt if I wore shoes all day long, so I decided to wear sneakers. And these are the sneakers I wear when I walk. Not this particular.
What kind of brands do you like?
Well, this is the only brand I'll wear anymore, Altra, because it has
Altra.
a box toe, and as you step on.
Will you take one of your shoes off and show
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So show us your shoe here,
Okay.
and why you've chosen this type of shoe. I've never seen it.
The Altra shoe has, they call this a zero drop shoe. I haven't seen their commercials on TV in a while, but amazing shoe. It's well constructed, and the idea behind the construction is that as you step and your foot spreads out from the weight of your body, it accommodates that. It allows for that. And so you don't feel as though your foot is pinched or binded during the walk. If you're walking for a really long time, you really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just walking around a little bit, that might not bother you that much, but repetitively over time, your foot really has to spread out to work properly.
The neurological action that is occurring while we are walking, could you define that a little bit?
Well, yeah, there's a lot going on when we're walking, when we're exercising in general. So in walking, first of all, let me start here. The body puts a high priority on your eyes getting on the horizon line. It's how we orient ourselves to the earth. And so that mechanism is not in your eyes, it's in your inner ear, right? This vestibular system that orients us to the earth. And the eyes are kind of like the backup system that says, oh yeah, we're there, right? And so this particular function of the body becomes distorted when the head becomes tilted in one way. And what ends up happening is the body takes that righting mechanism very seriously, right? So it drives your head to the horizon line so that you can orient yourself to the earth properly, but it distorts the rest of your body in the process. So if your head-on spine relationship is not good, then you're going to be working your whole body in a slightly off way, and over time it will deteriorate you. It's like taping a nickel to a ceiling fan blade. It gets all wobbly and out of whack, and it gets worse and worse over time. The faster it goes, the balance is where you're trying to achieve. So another really important aspect of this is when the skull on spine relationship is right, and the skull sits on the spine properly, it sets up the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve and the spinal accessory nerve, which share a conduit as they leave the skull and arbor into the body. The vagus nerve, when it is distorted and not functioning right, it affects everything: digestion, blood flow, your sympathetics.
Can you explain to all of us just a little bit of background on the vagus nerve? Many people know about it, but others haven't heard that much.
Yeah, the vagus nerve, it got its name from the wanderer, right? The vagabond, it wanders all over the body. It has implications on the gut and reproduction. This is the unmyelinated branch of the vagus nerve that runs your digestion. And then there's a myelinated branch of the vagus nerve that runs your heart and lung function. And it's all interacting with the frontal lobe of your brain, which inhibits your temporal lobe of your brain, which is that fight, flight, or freeze. It's what allows us to be human. The vagus nerve is the thing that took us from being animals to being humans. And so the frontal lobe started to become developed, and the frontal lobe started inhibiting that fight, flight, fear type of behavior and allowed us to see somebody as a potential friend or somebody who is an ally. And so now we start forming relationships based on the inhibiting of our temporal lobe of our brain, that reptilian or primitive part of our brain. And that's only through the development of our frontal lobe that became inhibited. Now, the frontal lobe's most important job is to inhibit flexion of the body. So when we force ourselves into flexion by sitting all day long, driving, couch potato, whatever it is that drives you into this position, you start to degenerate the frontal lobe of your brain. Once the frontal lobe of your brain becomes degenerative, you start seeing changes in the way people behave, the way they treat each other, whether they are loving to one another or not. And that's because that primitive part of the brain is not being inhibited properly, and so the ugliness comes out. And it affects other parts of the body too, the way blood flows through your body. So if you're walking and your vagus system is not functioning right, your oxygenation will be wrong. And that is really key in nutrients. The use of nutrients is allowing enough oxygen to be in the system. It's kind of like a gasoline engine. It needs fuel and oxygen to burn. And if it doesn't have the oxygen, the fuel won't burn. And then it becomes fat. And each cell has its own system. And so you can get some of your cells in your body functioning good and others not by just not paying attention to the system's telemetry system, which is walking, which is driving everything toward your brain the way it was designed to work.
How much walking do you think we need to do to make a difference?
So there's a lot of literature out there.
Yes.
One study, and that's been widely recognized as the distance that you should walk every day, is 10,000 steps. Everybody's talking about that. Now,
Yes.
I've more recently read 20,000 steps is closer to where we should try to achieve. This is starting to come. Now, 5,000 steps close to about 5 miles, 4.5 to 5 miles,
Is
depending.
how many? 20,000.
20,000, no, is closer to 10 miles.
Okay.
So now we're getting a little closer to that 13 to 15 miles that I said that is what our bodies were built on. And so, yeah, it's not that easy. It takes time, but don't forget, the people that made our bodies the way they are, that over time evolved us into what we are now, they had to walk.
Right.
It was a survival technique for them. It's not for us. But for us to be healthy, we have to walk. Our bodies haven't evolved.
So using things like a walking meeting or even having an office where you can stand and move around.
None of that. I don't believe in any of that. I
Really?
believe I believe in getting up and walking during the day, not sitting all day long, having a standing desk
Yes.
if you have to be in a room. But walking is about your gaze.
Got it.
It's about focusing in and moving in an ultra specific way, and all that other stuff that doesn't really. It sounds good,
Right.
and it's better than sitting, but it's not getting the walking in that your body and brain needs every day.
I've heard about the proprioceptive system, and it's a mouthful even just to say. What do you know about
Proprioception?
it?
Oh, yeah. I call it the sixth sense. It's the most powerful sense of the body. Your body is building a three-dimensional topographical picture of your body and its position in your brain every second, and every little nuance of movement changes that statue in your head. And so it's this constant moving thing. And your body, it's a protective mechanism. So if you're running down the street and you fall, you don't have to think, oh, I better turn my hand in this direction or I'm going to do a face plant. By then your teeth are already out of your head, right? Your body has to know exactly what position it's in so it can react all the time. And that's the proprioceptive system. And that's how it works in its best. Even your jaw function while you're eating, even the sutures in your head, they all possess proprioceptive nerve endings, receptors in them that allow the brain to see what your body's doing from all points of view all the time. It's cool. It's very cool.
Very remarkable.
And most people don't recognize it as a system of the body, like eyesight or
Right.
something like that. But all the systems work off of the proprioceptive system. It's so much more powerful than even your eyesight. The number of nerves that are attributed to proprioception compared to your eyesight is like 10,000 to 1. So it is a really powerful part of what we are, and walking is what accentuates it.
So it strengthens it, it accentuates it, and is there any other things that you could recommend that would accentuate it?
Well, exercise in general, movement, constant movement. There's a lot of study and discussion and argument over the position that people should sleep in.
Right.
And so I take that very seriously because, the body is built in a certain way. There's no animal on the planet that sleeps on their back except human beings. They all sleep on their stomach or on their sides. It's a protective mechanism. It's the way they were wired so that an animal doesn't come and attack their belly. And so we humans think that we're so smart that we've developed this way of sleeping on our back, thinking that it's the best thing to do, but it is not. No animal sleeps on their back. When you lay on your back, your mouth opens. You start breathing through your mouth. Now, your nose is designed to take in air, filter it, distribute it to your nasal concha, which swirls it around and warms it and moisturizes it, and it delivers it to your lungs with enough pressure that it can stay in there and you can get a good CO2 oxygen exchange. When you lay on your back and your mouth opens, all that goes out the window, all of it. And so you start breathing through your mouth. You don't get any of that clean air. You're getting other kinds of air, and it leads to dental cavities. And so it's very, very important, this oxygenation of the body and how it becomes oxygenated through different activities. And I'm here to say that there's no better activity than walking, because when you are upright, you position your joints in your body, your proprioceptive system. It's lined up now when you're in erect posture, and now your rib expansion, your chest expansion, and your diaphragm's ability to drop and lift and bring air in normally is perfectly set up when you're walking and standing. When you're forward, not so much. And this is something that to address nutrition without oxygenation is backwards thinking.
That is fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of experience, knowledge, insight, and discovery with all of us.
Thank you.
It's so interesting that this doctor has now validated what is really contrary to what most people believe, and that is that running is the key to real good exercise and health. But no, you don't really have to do that. We can also get some benefits out of walking, correct?
That's right,
Straight
Montel.
up.
That's exactly right. And we both know the impact, the neurological impact
Absolutely.
of walking and what it does to the brain and the brain's plasticity.
As simple as it is, it's so impactful.
Yeah.